Season 2 of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast, a place to learn more about homeopathy, deepening your knowledge, expanding your universe of possibility in the world of health and well-being through homeopathy.
Homeo what?
Homeo what?
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
And welcome, Carly Hour.
Hey, Carly.
Hi.
For those of you who don't know Carly, works with us at AHE, and Carly's job is, I think, the hardest job of all. It's in compliance. In other words, she's the lady that has to make sure we follow all the rules. Could you imagine if I had to do that job?
What,
No.
you being Sicilian and old?
It would be really hard. I think I would have a hard time. Anyway, but we asked Carly to be here because Carly has been the point person on the current situation with accreditation and certification and the CHC's movements and so forth. And Carly and Alastair go way back because they both held leadership positions at Achina and worked together. Carly is technically Al's work wife. And so the three of us are here to talk today about an update on what has been happening in all of the fallout from the decision that the CHC has made. There are two things I want to say before we start. One is that I'm really looking forward to getting back to our regular podcasting about homeopathy and not about the profession of homeopathy. I was going and looking at the archive of what we've talked about recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk about all the fun stuff. So I promise our next podcast is going to be that. That's number one. And number two is I want to start us with a question. And the question is, for everyone who's listening, do you want homeopathy to get its rightful place in the medical system once again? That's question number one. Question two is, would you or would you not love it if people who go to an emergency room have access to aconite and arnica and phosphorus and nux vomica and so forth? How many times has a homeopathic intervention stopped someone from what turned out to be what could have been an unnecessary medical procedure because a homeopathic remedy was able to stop something in action? So the question is, would you like to see homeopathic remedies delivered by people who know how to use them in the standard medical environment, like an emergency room, like in an obstetrician's office, right? Would you like, if you have been diagnosed, more than 50 million Americans, 75% of whom are women, if you're diagnosed with one or more autoimmune diseases, to be told that you have an option other than steroids, or an immunosuppressant, shutting down your immune system. And would you like that alternative to be homeopathy delivered by someone who actually has the skills to follow a chronic case to its inevitable, resolution? I would like to see that. You guys, everybody, yeah? All right. So if that's what we want, and I think that if we were to send out a survey, if Al got his survey machine out and started sending out surveys through the PGRN from Home Foundation and asked the question, the three questions that I just posed, I think that we would get resounding yeses. I think there would be very few people who would say, no, I would like to see a restriction on the delivery of homeopathy in the medical system. So it is with that spirit that we are really hell-bent and determined to do everything that we can to elevate education and clinical training and research in homeopathy to further the profession. And I want to say one caveat before we get started on the big part of the conversation, the meat, if you will, is that if you don't want that for yourself, well, then you don't have to do it. You don't have to get a homeopathic remedy from a medical provider. You don't have to have, liaison providers who are professional homeopaths servicing you. You can choose to go to a homeopath who's got whatever training you would like. That's the way it works. And if you don't want to participate in elevating the standards, then don't, right? Nobody is forcing you to do that. But what we want to see is a path that brings homeopathy back. And as Carly and Al are going to really lead us through, we believe that the ways that things are moving with the CHC would not help that endeavor, but rather these other pathways forward that have been established kind of miraculously seem to be taking us in a better direction. So without further ado, we're going to take you through a synopsis of what has gone on We're going to talk about the current situation it is. And then Carly, who has worked tirelessly for the summer on this, is going to also talk to us about an unbelievably exciting possibility. It's more than a possibility at this point. A very, very exciting path forward that we can all jump into. All right, that's it. That's the intro, guys. Carly and Al, can you guys give us the Carly actually can you give us the synopsis of where things have been, sort of the overview of what has happened for people who are maybe just tuning in or need a refresher?
So the Council for Homeopathic Certification has recently made a policy change that for the past 6-ish years, in order to be eligible to sit for the CHC exam and become certified, you had to have attended an accredited homeopathy school. They recently changed that eligibility criteria, and as of January 2025, are now going to be accepting applicants who were not trained at an accredited homeopathy school. People who were trained at accredited schools are still eligible, but now folks who went to a school that's not accredited are also eligible to apply. This is concerning for many reasons, mostly just because, as you know, we fully believe in and support and advocate for high quality education. And part of that is accreditation. Accreditation brings all kinds of safeguards and assurances to a student's experience in their school. It protects students, it protects faculty and staff, it protects the public, it protects clients. There's all kinds of assurances set in when you have an accredited program. We are concerned now that schools that are not accredited may not be meeting some of the standards that we want everybody to kind of be living up to. That's the main concern. And we have attempted to communicate with and work with the CHC, trying to understand how they came to make this decision and why they made this decision. And we have had meetings, we've had lots of emails, and it's been difficult to get a transparent answer as to how they came to this. So at this point, pretty much all of the accredited schools are seriously concerned and are looking for other ways for their graduates to move forward that maybe goes around the CHC. I think I probably missed a lot there. Al, what else do we need to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I hear that, I just hear, I think for me, 4 critical points. The first is who we are, and we stand for the highest possible educational standards. And in every profession on the planet, without exception, especially in healthcare, that means educational accreditation. In the decision that the CHC has made, bewilderingly remove that kind of universal process. What they've essentially done, and notwithstanding the language they use, which from my perspective involves a bunch of mirrors and a whole lot of smoke, is to absolutely lower the educational standards. Now, when I say that, what I also am now aware of is that the agreement that was in place for many, many years, as I understand it, especially when I was president at Achina, was that prior even to 2016 when I took over there, is that what made the CHC exam so good was that the schools had oversight on all of their clinical operations, on all of their academic operations, so that the exam didn't need to be so jam-packed. The exam is valid because of accreditation. What is bewildering to me, as someone that has spent my before I got to the US, I spent my last 8 years in the world of the Australian higher educational system. And okay, it's a different system, but it's not really. What that means is that they've unvalidated their own exam. It's an extraordinary move to take. The third thing is that it's so uncollegial. I can't believe it. The way in which a decision is made that has impacts all over our profession. You know, it's often said that, when, Carla, you sneeze, I get a cold. It's exactly what happens in a profession that's so small and under such pressure sometimes, that to have made that decision without consultation, without understanding the history, without really transparency, and it's so upsetting. I actually, the biggest thing for me is that upsetment that I feel that such a decision could have been made, such an uncreative decision could have been made. Going, hey, folks, we got a challenge here. Can you provide any direction in the way that when Achina did have and has had its own challenges, we've gone to the CHC or we've gone to Nash or we've gone to some of the other folks as well. So for me, 36 years practicing homeopathy. For 30 of those years, I've been involved in professional associations or education. To have seen this, I'm going to say it, almost perfect system that existed in the US dismantled with a decision is unbelievable to me and incredibly short-sighted.
Thanks for that. I think so. If you're just tuning into this, you kind of you've got the consolidated situation presented. There's another. So the last two podcasts ago, we talked about what happened with the CHC. So if you want to deep dive into it, just go back. Maybe in the show notes, we can put what episode number it was. And I want to close out this segment with just one small piece. Which is because we're going to talk about the exam and how we understand if someone is qualified in homeopathy. And so, as Alastair had brought up, the CHC's exam is only valid because it is dependent on the oversight of the accredited schools, ensuring that signing off on the performance of the student. And the biggest part of that is clinical training. Okay, so the CHC exam went from being a 2 full day exam plus the submission of cases and an oral review in the end to being a 2-hour multiple choice online test. That's a huge difference. Now, the CHC has established a PQE committee, and every time I do this, I forget to bring up what the acronym is. I'm embarrassed.
It's the Pre-Qualification Evaluation Committee.
See, this is why Carly's here, right? Okay. The Pre-Qualification Evaluation Committee. So the CHC has installed this committee, right? So this committee, led by one person who comes from a school that recently relinquished its accreditation, think of that how you may, that person now is responsible for doing all the work that an accredited school would have done to evaluate a student's performance. And let me tell you, as people who are listening to this, you've got 3 people in school leadership. It takes so many hours to evaluate a student's performance. We meet regularly to make sure that these people are not going out and practicing homeopathy on the unsuspecting public. I mean, it's a serious medical modality. So now all the checks and balances are gone and it's one person, right? And I'm sure she'll have a committee, but there is no way that a committee can make up for what has been lost, right? Would you guys agree? Am I making a valid statement there?
No, you're not really. It's that, I said it with a big sigh and a heavy heart. But it's
well, explain how, because
that committee has not got a great record with transparency, how it goes about its business, and the way in which decisions are made. But I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. But what I'm saying is, can a committee, a PQE committee, do all the things that an accredited school is doing to ensure that a person sitting for the exam is ready to do it?
From my point of view, is that educational accreditation provides that accountability and oversight to the school. And with that gone, all of that is now subsumed in some way by the CHC in a way which is, it's actually, it's gone from, I said it before, almost the perfect structure where you had the accredited schools being accredited by Achina, you had the certification credentialing body separate to that, and, you've got another body that protects and supports the profession, NASH, as well as the advocacy groups. Yeah. And so by the subsuming of critical accreditation tasks into the certification body, you've now got like a one-legged stool and it's rocking, Yeah.
So we're saying the same thing.
I just want to make one comment, and I'm sure you guys have probably made this in previous podcasts. One of the things that happens when a school is accredited is they're actually required to demonstrate to their accreditor that they have assessment processes that ensure that a student is ready, safe, competent to go out there and practice in the world. We'd like to think that every school has that process, whether they're accredited or not. But we know that accreditation ensures that that process is in place. And we're not confident that that's happening in every school that has not sought accreditation. Some of them might be, but there's nobody making sure that that's happening. So it's a really important piece that is now missing in the CHC's new process. And they're giving that responsibility of assuring clinical competence that a school should be doing. They're passing that responsibility on to a small group of people who are on this PQE committee and have not been transparent about what their evaluation processes are. We've asked multiple times and have not been given an answer.
It's a funny old thing that educational accreditation protects the student, at the end of the day. And that's, Denise, you've mentioned this a number of times before. But one of the standards by which a school is accredited is, are you attending to the financial vulnerabilities of students? If things go awry, is there a state license? And is there a bond, which means that students get their money back? That is gone under this smart decision by the CHC folks.
All right. So
I should really add that homeopathy's got a long history of students going back to 1835, where school closures leave students out of pocket. Yeah.
That's a really big deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
really
unless
is.
you're totally loaded and you don't mind losing $10, $15, $20,000. I mean, then.
Right.
Okay. All right.
All
so
right.
let's go to the next part, which is, where are we with this and where are we going? Carly, where do things stand and what has been happening behind the scenes? You've been up at 4:00 every morning working on this. You've been in meeting after meeting. Can you bring us up to date with what's been happening and where things are?
One of the things that comes to mind when you ask that question is just the incredible way that the community has come together around this. Hopefully everybody who's listening to this has seen the petition that was circulated a couple weeks ago. Maybe you signed it, maybe you offered a comment expressing your concern over this situation, but we were able to gather 472 signatures and I think 200 and something comments in 7 or 8 days. And those entries came from CCH credential holders. They came from licensed folks, naturopaths, MDs, nurses, people who have a stake in homeopathy, but maybe at a higher licensed level. They came from consumers. They came from folks who have other registrations, like through NASH. 472 people came together to say, we are not okay with this, and we want to elevate standards. We want to keep standards high, and we want to protect homeopathy education and the homeopathy profession at large. That's the first thing I want to point out is this. There's been infighting in homeopathy forever, but this is a moment that a large portion of the community has come together for a single cause, and that's really inspiring to me. So where we've gone from there is that we sent out that petition. We were letting people know what the concerns were, asking people to sign on and give their comments. And then within the last week or two, we presented all of that data to the CHC and said, listen, we want to talk with you. We want to work with you. We want to find a solution together for this. You have made a decision that many people in this profession do not support. And we want to find a way to solve that problem with you so that we can come back to being able to support the CHC. We presented them with all the signatures, the comments, and had a meeting. And the long story short, the conclusion of that meeting was that it all kind of fell on deaf ears. They didn't really, I want to say they didn't care. I wish I could say it in a nicer way, but that was the sense that we all got from that meeting, was that those 472 concerns that were submitted just didn't really matter. And the response was, well, all of these people don't understand the situation. So we're going to keep moving forward with this policy that we've now implemented, and you all just don't understand what we're doing. So, how do you respond to that? Well, you just kind of say, Okay. I think a lot of us at first were like really angry, really frustrated. But we've kind of come through that and are now in a space where we're just like, okay, that's the direction that the CHC wants to go. That's okay. That's their right. We have done everything that we can to try to collaborate. If that is not going to work, that's okay. Let's just move on. Let's be at peace with the situation. Let's move on. Let's continue to raise the bar. Let's keep standards high. Let's keep doing what we do, which at AHE, what we do, as you've already said, is we strive for high quality education. We prepare really good homeopaths to go out there and treat the community and meet the needs of the public. And we want to bring homeopathy back to its rightful place in medicine. So we're just going to keep doing that. And there's a lot of folks out there who want to do that same thing. So there's some exciting new avenues for us to be able to do that.
What are the avenues, Carly?
Wait,
Do you want me?
take away. Let's just sit for 1 second to say, okay, so the whole thing was kind of crap, but at the end of the day, it's like maybe we needed to go on this journey to see where the community is. The community has come together to say, by and large, right? People really want us to move forward and to elevate the profession. And just when we thought the ship was going to sink, just when we're about to get our straws out to breathe through it, something happened.
I think it was sometime last year or earlier this year. The state of Arizona passed legislation opening up a license for people who are professional homeopaths, meaning the people that we train at AHE, all of our faculty staff, most of the people we work with. It gives you a license without have gone to medical school and having a naturopathic license or a doctor's license. It's a license at the professional homeopathy level. So the really cool thing about this is that it is available to anyone who has gone to an accredited school and who has passed a board exam that is approved by the Arizona licensing, Arizona Homeopathic and Integrated Medicine Examiners. So if you no longer can support the CHC and can no longer move in the direction that they're going, that's okay, because now there's a license for you. And
we're all moving to Arizona?
No, you don't have to be a resident of Arizona.
What?
It's open to anyone.
Wait a second.
I know.
Okay.
Pretty incredible.
This is really incredible. So there is another option. And funny enough, it's an option that I think might be better. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between certification and licensure?
Yeah, a little bit. So all of the information that I'm about to talk about around this licensure has been provided to us by the chairman of the board of the Arizona Homeopathic and Integrated Medicine Examiners. His name is Dr. Mario Fontes, and I've been in weekly meetings with him for the past 4 weeks, learning about updates on this license. So what I provide right now is what I know. Some of it is not going to be as detailed as I would like it to be, because I want those details to come straight from him, and we should know those details within the next week. But what I'm going to tell you now is what we know. So licensure is a state sanctioned and consumer recognized license across many modalities, right? Everybody knows what a license is. So that's the difference between a certificate or a registration and a license. It's state sanctioned. So this is above a peer-reviewed credential or registration. Another really interesting thing about it is that it opens the window to be able to accept insurance plans from your clients as payment. So some insurances are starting to open up to homeopathy or similar modalities. Sometimes it's paid for through a health savings account or something like that. So as insurances are kind of opening their doors to modalities such as ours, this gives our practitioners the opportunity to engage in that form of payment.
Awesome. How do people become licensed? What is involved? And I know that there are specifics like cost and things that are not fully well, they're not made public yet, and they may be as early as tomorrow. But at the time of this recording, we can't give the specifics, although it's not really that different than getting certified. I mean, it's within the same range. But what does it take to get licensed?
Right. So the eligibility criteria in the legislation is that you have to have completed a program accredited by the Accreditation Commission for Homeopathic Education in North America, which is ACHINA, which is the organization that we are accredited through, or any successor organization of ACHINA, or any similar board-approved body that accredits homeopathy. So this would allow the board to have discretion in maybe accreditors that are in other countries or other accrediting bodies that pop up that also accredit homeopathy schools. So that's one. Go to an accredited school and successfully graduate from it.
Yeah.
And the second criteria is that you need to pass a board exam that is approved by the Board of Homeopathic and Integrative Medical Examiners. Currently, the exam that is available right now is the CHC exam. However, this is the big part. This is the exciting part.
Yes.
We have been able to get approval by Dr. Fontes to submit a newly developed exam specific for this license for the board to review. And if they review it and they like it and they find it to be valid, then they will also approve for that exam to be used rather than the CHC exam. So it would give an option for an alternative exam to be used for folks who don't feel like they can support the direction the CHC is going. Again, this exam needs to be developed. So it's in its very, very baby stages. We have brought together a committee of faculty from accredited schools, naturopathic exam writers, previous CHC exam writers, and some other consultants within the community who have experience in writing exams. It's currently a committee of about 8 to 10 people, and that committee is going to develop this new exam. We feel fairly confident that we can get that done and launched and ready for folks to sit for within 6 months. That's our goal. It's a pretty short-term alternative to the CHC exam for those who are kind of asking themselves, what do I do now?
That's the next question that we need to talk about is what should people do now? But let's finish up because there are two more parts to this that we're going to talk about. And one of them is, for those of you who have been following this closely, you may have gotten an email from the CHC refuting, and I'm using air quotes if you can't see me, refuting what has been said about the process so far. And so Carly's just going to answer a couple of those questions. But I do think it's important to just sort of acknowledge a couple of maybe murky points there. But one of the things that is really important to note is that this exam, so one of the things that the CHC will likely, if I'm preemptively rebutting them, they'll say, oh, this is Alan Carly, and Denise, and they're making up an exam and da-da-da-da. No, this is a committee that is being formed, as Carly said, that is going to include people who have expertise in this field so that the exam will be fair and equitable and will represent what it needs to represent. Now, of course, the criteria of graduating from an accredited school will still hold. So therefore, the exam will the committee will make the assumption that people have graduated from an accredited school. So I think that's important to say. The other thing before we wrap up this section, Carly, can you talk about if somebody were to say, is it better to be licensed or certified? What is how would somebody work through that differential?
I don't have a great answer for that yet because I'm still trying to wrap my head around this new idea of licensure myself.
Yeah.
I never thought that this would be an option for us, to be honest. It never crossed my mind. So right now, all I can say is that there's kind of like different levels of professionalism and stamps of approval. So you have your registration level, which would be like the RSHOM through NASH, which is a peer-reviewed registration, which means that you've submitted your work to NASH, you've submitted your clinical write-ups and demonstration of having been in practice for so long, and somebody reviews it and says, yes, this person knows what they're doing, they can use our registration. So that's one level. The next level would be the certification, which is through the CHC, because this is not only a peer review of your competencies, but it's also an exam, right? You have to take an exam and pass it, demonstrating your knowledge and skills and competency in that exam. And then you have your your certification. The next level would be the professional license, because it is state sanctioned and does require accredited training and requires passing a licensure board exam. Best practice for a license is that it's an exam that is developed for a level of licensure, not certification. The only reason the board is using the CHC exam is because a licensure exam doesn't exist. So that's our goal, is to produce an exam that is appropriate for the level of licensure. So it's a step above the certification. And then you have up above that, you have your medical licenses. So you have the MDs, the NDs, the folks with a medical license who are practicing homeopathy. And that license also exists in Arizona. It has existed for many years. So Arizona has been licensing homeopaths, medical homeopaths, for many years. And now they're also adding this level for professional homeopaths. But I would really encourage everyone to show up. So Thursday, September 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern, Trinity Health Hub is hosting a 30-minute info session with Dr. Fontes and Debbie Noah, who is the president of the Homeopathic Association of Arizona. So Dr. Fontes will be there to answer everybody's questions. And I'm hoping at this session, he'll be able to give more specifics around fees and eligibility and stuff like that. Right now, I'm just giving what I know for sure to be true, but he has a lot more details that are going to be rolling out in the next week or two. So that's Thursday, September 5th, 8 p.m. Eastern. The link.
Put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, and it's open to anybody. You don't have to be a member of Trinity to join. It's a Zoom meeting open to anyone. I would encourage everybody to show up to that, because I think Dr. Fontes would be able to give a better answer to that question around the difference between certification and licensure.
Fantastic. Al, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I do, because, we're having a conversation with folks. A lot of our students will be listening to us. And a student at the beginning of a program has different things in front of them than a student at the end of the program. And so if you are a student at the beginning of the program, my statement, my advice to you would just be relax. We got you. We've got some work to do, and we're gonna find you the best home imaginable. But what about those? What do we say to those students, especially the graduates that were planning for an October CHC exam? What do you want to say to those folks?
What I want to say to those folks is, if you can, be patient and wait for us to get this alternative exam launched and sit for that exam. One reason is because if you sit for the CHC exam, that's $500 right there. If you want to then, if you pass that exam and you want to then take that to get your license, you're also going to be paying the application and the licensure fees for the license, which is going to be another chunk. However, if you can wait until the new exam is developed, it will be significantly more affordable. We are planning on making this new exam priced at a point that the exam plus the licensure application plus the license fees are comparable to the CHC fees for folks who are looking for an alternative route. So if you sit for the CHC exam in October and then take that to get your license, you're going to be paying a lot more than if you can just wait 6-ish months and start fresh with the new exam. But if you've already been preparing and you've been studying, and for some reason you just feel really strongly that you want to take the October exam, that's okay. Do what you need to do.
Yeah.
But we do want folks to know that there is an alternative for you. It may not be as soon as next month, but if you can wait a few more months, there will be an alternative.
I think that's pretty fantastic. I think I would agree with what Carly said. I'm not sure I would add anything else. If you've been preparing for the exam, and you just want to do it, then do it. The question is really about sort of the future. And I think if we didn't have the other pathway of Arizona, and I was afraid to believe that this Arizona option was as amazing as it is, I don't know, it seems like this is a little bit of a miracle, right? I mean,
I was too. I was very skeptical for like probably 2 or 3 straight weeks. I kept messaging Debbie and Dr. Fontes with all of these questions. Like I was trying to poke holes in it. Like there's got to be a hole somewhere. What's the catch?
yeah, yeah.
And every meeting I had with them week after week just made me like more at ease. Like, okay, this is actually a thing. This is a new path for us, and what amazing timing it is.
Unbelievable timing. Yep. When we heard about it, it was in June when all this first started. Karen Allen reached out to us, and I was 100% not convinced that this was going to be an option. And now I'm really, because I know if Carly says that she's investigated it, looked under every corner and poked it full of holes, I know that that it's going to be okay. So I think if it were me, if I were a recent graduate deciding whether or not to take the exam, first of all, let's just say, and this isn't going to happen, but that Arizona, if it didn't work out, you have the next go round for the CHC. So it's not like giving up the future, but it is $500 to sit for the CHC exam. So, there's that. It looks like if you are a graduate of an accredited program, this is a viable and really good option. And I think because of the language you would have heard from us over the last couple of podcasts where we've talked about this, like lack of transparency, concern about whether or not there's integrity in the plans for the future, are people really looking out for sort of the elevation of homeopathy and, accredited educational programs and so on and so forth. I feel like the licensure, the folks who are heading that up, that's what they want. This is a way. I mean, one of the things that I've always wished for and dreamed of was that professional homeopaths would have an option to practice at the most appropriate level for them. In other words, if you are a really killer homeopath and you've done all of this work to train, you should be able to operate at a higher level than someone perhaps who hasn't. In the same way that a licensed medical person who's done a few weekends of homeopathy school also should be held to a certain standard. And this parity in assessment of skills and performance needs to happen, right? You can't, just because you are medically licensed doesn't make you a good homeopath. It does, I think, make you safer in terms of knowing risk. Right? I mean, that's a really important thing. That's one of the reasons why I think people sometimes choose to go to a medical homeopath, is to say, I know that this person, if something is going on that I really should seek medical intervention for, allopathic medical intervention, then this person is going to direct them to it. And I think that's it's a big step. So another thing that this licensure pathway represents is the first step toward parity in assessment of the skills and attributes of a homeopath. And, Dr. Fuentes, this is headed up by a medical doctor. Now, I know that there are homeopaths who are like, I don't want anything to do with allopathic medical people. Then don't, right? Like, that's fine. Like, you do you. But there are definitely enough of us who want to see homeopathy return to its rightful place in medicine. And we want there to be as many pathways as possible for people who are willing to do the work to be safe and effective practitioners. And that is really key, right? That accountability is key. And that's why we are standing behind this Carly has done enough work in learning about this Arizona licensure program that Foundation has decided to sponsor the Arizona licensure meeting in Arizona. And the sponsorship is basically we're going to support an event that they're having, and we're going to be there so that we can talk with people in Arizona, face to face about this path forward.
It's important to remember that the whole idea about this license in Arizona is that we're hoping other states will replicate it and open up licensure in their own state. So, as often happens with legislation, when one state does something, then other states, who kind of are in line with that value or whatever it may be, will also pass legislation in their own state. So the idea is that we want this to spread across many states, and then you have a homeopathy situated in a position nationally that's recognized at a state sanctioned level, which is really incredible. So this is just the beginning in Arizona. The plan, and I think that might be why they didn't make a residency requirement, because there's so many folks out there who are really good homeopaths who would be interested in having this license, but maybe they don't live in Arizona. But maybe if they obtain a license in Arizona, their state might say, "Oh, you're paying Arizona for that? Well, we want you to pay us for that. We're gonna make our own license for our residents here in this state." So the long-term goal here is for homeopathy to get a foothold at the state licensure level across as many states as we can get.
That is so amazing.
Yeah,
And
which is also why we need an exam appropriate for licensure.
yes.
Because this exam will eventually not only be used by Arizona, the Arizona board, but other states can also adopt the exam to be used by their boards. So, yeah.
It's really exciting. Now, I know that historically in homeopathy, and I don't mean historically like 19th century homeopathy, but in the last, say, 25 to 30 years, in the time that I've been around, there are a lot of sort of the free spirits that come to homeopathy who say, "You can't tell me what to do. I don't want any licensure. I don't want any of this, any of that." Once again, you don't have to do this, right? Don't do it. But I think that if we go back to what we talked about in the very beginning, which is, do you want to see remedies available? If somebody has to go to the hospital, there's arnica and aconite, and that, that in the medical profession, homeopathy is delivered as a part of the standard of care. Then we need to step up and we need to establish standards for recognition within the profession. Yeah. And so people who want to do it on their own, whatever, do it. But for everyone who wants to get on the train to bringing homeopathy back to its rightful place in the medical system, this is a path forward. There's one last, so little sticky bits. So if you don't want to hear sticky bits, you could go now, right? It's just like, it's fine. Like, this is all the good stuff. Geez, right? This is all happy. We've got a path forward. I'm thrilled about it. But one of the things that Carly has had to do in the last couple of months in being the point person for all of this is she's been a fact gatherer. And Carly has, and with the institutional knowledge that she and Alastair have from their years of service with Achina, and also participating in, being on the accredited school side, they know the questions to ask. And so what we're going to talk about in this last section is about just going through, and we don't want to take too much time on refuting what the CHC said, but it is important since, I don't want this to become a back and forth. Like, we've decided that our energy goes forward. Our energy is best utilized in the furthering of the profession. But I think it's important for people to know that some of what the CHC is putting forward, maybe there are other ways to understand it. And the last thing that I want to say before Carly gets into that is, one thing Carly has had to do recently was go through the AHE website to look at all the ways in which we have supported the CHC, and we're taking it out of our website. And I think I want to be super transparent. After the ways in which the leadership of the CHC has treated other people, the prior board who have resigned, the stories that we have heard, the ways that they behaved at the meeting. It was on the 21st of August, the meeting that Carly had. That's the meeting, if you've been following this, that we referenced in our last podcast about this, that they are not showing good faith. There is a disregard. And I personally, as a leader of a school, don't believe that we can, in good faith, encourage our students to take that path. I would never say to somebody, don't do it. But I just think I like to be transparent about where I stand. And I will not renew my CHC designation, which is coming up. And I will be removing it from the statement of my credentials going forward, because it no longer represents what is important to me as my credentials show to the public. So I'm just, I'm coming out and saying that I'm, not going to do it going forward. Anywho, Carly, can you take us through the sticky bits if you don't want to hear, if you only want to stay in your happy place, but I think it's important for us to all know, right? So
there was a email that went out from the CHC called Statement of Facts, trying to explain the situation from the CHC's point of view. And I want to say, like, no hard feelings. Like, we're just going in different directions, and that's okay. But it's important that we have some context around some of these statements, because some of them, I just want to shed some context on it. So there's one statement that was made that says the CHC's recent decision to expand eligibility has been in board meeting discussions for the past 4 years. Additionally, when the CHC first implemented ACHINA accreditation requirements in 2018, only 6 years ago, there was an implicit understanding that ACHINA would, 1, acquire third-party accreditation or Department of Education approval, and 2, increase the number of ACHINA accredited schools. Neither of these has occurred. So this is an argument that's being made as to why they've made this policy change, and it's just not a valid argument. What you need to understand about this is that the accredited school requirement has technically only been in place for 6 years, though there was warning about it for at least 5 years prior to when they actually implemented it.
Can I just add something? As a person who was in school leadership at that point, every year they would say, okay, this is the year. And then they would extend it to let more people in. Yeah. So as early as, I think, 2016 or 2017. And then I remember 2018, they were like, no, that's the year. And then it was 2019. So they kept grandfathering people in. So it's not like, anyway.
Yeah. So the point that's important to make here is that ACHINA, and I don't work for ACHINA anymore. It's been 4 years now since I've worked for them, but I was the executive administrator for 6 years, and I was there for every step of the USED application process. So back in 2020, when Alastair was president of ACHINA, I was executive administrator, which means I was the staff person. We applied to the U.S. Department of Education 3 times, and and they lost our application 3 times. So we were making phone calls to the department. We were sending emails. I think even one of our board members showed up in DC and tried to talk to somebody at the department because we couldn't get a hold of anybody.
And was escorted out of the building.
Yeah.
Yes, she was escorted out of the building. So, so the effort has been in place to gain this USED recognition for many years.
And can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
That statement implies that the number of accredited schools has dropped, but it's doubled. I think it doubled over the 2016 to 2020 period, right? Or 2022
because
period.
We weren't accredited in the beginning.
Exactly.
We were a candidate school at that point.
Yeah.
Yes. So both of those statements are false. And what's also really important to understand here is that even when the federal government is operating at its top capacity and all its wheels are turning, which we know hardly ever happens, but it takes 5 years to get approved by the Department of Education. So 5 years, that's a long time. So even if our application had not been lost back in 2020 and we got the ball rolling on that application, it still would have taken 5 years for Achina to get recognized by the department. So maybe it might just barely be finishing up its process right now, had those applications actually gone to where they were supposed to go. Now, back in 2020.
In 2020, I mean, it was COVID. So the government was shut down for a large portion of that time. And so nothing was happening. So you can't really blame Achina for the pandemic.
No. Right. And so back in 2020, Al finished his term as president. He had to move on. New leadership stepped into Achina, and they picked up the torch for the Department of Ed recognition and continued carrying it forward. But this process takes a very long time. So it's really important to understand that this claim that Achina has not followed through with what it said it would do is nonsense. And also that the number of Achina schools has not increased is also nonsense. So I just really want people to understand that. Another piece of this is, I'm not sure what paragraph this is, but 2 paragraphs down, it talks about the process for including subject matter experts to gather public input on the certification program. It says, the integrity and security of the CHC certification program and its accreditation is dependent upon CHC's ability to make public policy decisions as an independent body, irrespective of outside influence and bias. The appropriate method for certifying organization is to seek public input via subject matter experts. This happens every 5 years. CHC seeks public input via a formal process called the Job Analysis Survey. And from there, they take that public input and they implement whatever they're going to do for the program, for the exam, for eligibility criteria, etc. What is really interesting in this statement is that they do not say when was the last time that job analysis survey was done. I can tell you when it was because I have it in my email. It was in 2020. So yes, they might engage subject matter experts and do a job analysis survey to gather public input and stakeholder input, as we have been asking them to do over the past couple months. But they did not do that prior to implementing this eligibility criteria change. The last time that was done was in 2020. So it's really interesting to think about, because a claim is being made that we are doing what we're supposed to do, but the year that was done was conveniently left out of the statement. The last time that was done was 2020. No public input or stakeholder input has been gathered since then.
The implication being working outside of their own rules and the rules of their own accredited certified exam.
Okay, I think there's just 2 more points. I know we're kind of getting on in this thing. So there's a claim saying that the problem, what part of the problem here is that some states are kind of coming down hard on schools that are not recognized by a Department of Education accreditor, and are saying that those schools cannot call themselves accredited. So even though they might be accredited by the private accreditor, Achina, the state is saying that they cannot say they're accredited because Achina is not recognized by the Department of Education.
Yep.
So the claim here is that Achina did not address this issue with these schools that are affected by this. It's absolutely false. Achina did try to address that issue with those schools. Made multiple offers to create a different yet equal designation for those schools who could not use the term accredited. They were going to make just a different thing, call it approved, call it whatever. You don't have to use the word accredited. We have been told by Achina that schools were not interested in that solution and declined the offer to remain under the Achina accredited school umbrella. It just really ticks me off when people try to make statements like this that we know are not true. So it's important that we point that out.
And can I just add to that? I mean, without, sort of going too far down the wormhole, but it's kind of really annoying because there is a creative solution to those schools. I mean, and who knows, touch wood, it might happen to AHE, a British school, could happen to anyone, where the state says, oh, we've decided that you can't say you're accredited because blah, blah, blah. Well, Achinu said, we'll find a solution for that. There's no problem. The solution is not to lower the standard. Right. It's just extraordinary that is the way that it's being articulated.
It's not even extraordinary. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you know what? It kind of brings up something that I hadn't really thought about this, but when we started talking about how many years CHC allowed graduates from non-accredited schools to take the truncated exam. In other words, they allowed so many people in without oversight for years, right? So remember, everybody, there's a timeline here. There was the point where, like when Carly and I took the exam, it was hard and it was a couple of days and it was an overarching exam. As I mentioned before, 2 full days plus the submission of cases plus an oral review in the end. Okay. So the CHC switched to the exam that makes the assumption that all of those criteria have been met, that someone has secured that. And they grandfathered people in year after year after year. So there have only been a few short years where this requirement for both accreditation and certification have been in tandem. So just a couple of years. Anywho, all right. Is there any more? There's one more.
Yeah, there's a statement that is so odd. And it says it's about the CHC's requirements and high standards, and saying that their standards are actually higher than accredited school standards, and yet they say basically the exact same thing of what our accredited schools do. So right. So accredited schools have always had the requirement that you have to have 500 hours of homeopathic education and theory, philosophy, foundations, all of the didactic stuff. And then you have to have 500 hours of clinical observation and analysis and a minimum of 10 independently taken cases with 2 follow-ups each, supervised by a qualified homeopath. That's always been the requirement. That's always been what our schools have done. Many of our schools require more of their students than that, but that's the minimum requirement. So I'm not sure what part of that is being interpreted as being higher than what our schools already do. But the difference here is, and this is the part that, again, just we're concerned that the new CHC leadership doesn't understand what accreditation is, what it brings to the table for schools and for students, and the value of it. So accreditation, like I said earlier in this podcast, requires schools to demonstrate the effectiveness of their assessment processes, and it ensures that their graduates are clinically competent before being cleared to graduate. We don't graduate people that we don't trust out there on the unsuspecting public. And that's what a part of what accreditation brings. There's many other, values to it, but it requires schools to have a process to ensure that. And as we know, that there are some schools out there that are not accredited and that don't have those processes. Some of them probably do, but we know that some don't. So that's an important point to make. Al, did you want to say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the solution has always clearly been there in flashing lights, and that the solution to the landscape challenge that's been there with unaccredited schools and accredited schools is not that accredited schools are better than unaccredited schools. They're just, they're different, and they go that extra number of steps. The solution has been what has occurred with, say, Tanya's school, the Tennessee school. By writing it's simple. It's called an educational pathway. The existence of private unaccredited schools continues. By all means, study, with your favorite, dynamic and charismatic person. But if there's a pathway to an accredited school and then entry into the profession from that standard. That's the solution that's always been there, is what happens in, I have to say, every other profession.
What to even say? All right. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss old books and dusty old homeopathic memorabilia in our next podcast. Let's get back to our roots.
Back to it. Are we going to leave aside the allegation that was made, I assume, against us, the monopolization, that these are unfounded rumors and special interests and financial interests, and that we're preventing the growth of the profession? I don't think we need to address it.
No, let's just do what we do. We don't need to. We've already gone low enough in talking about this and kind of the negative realm. Let's get back into the positive and just do what we do.
Yes. Let's do it. We're raising the bar, people, not just us. The accredited school community is committed to doing the things that are necessary to bring homeopathy back into its rightful place in medicine. And if that's where your interests lie, then join us. And if you've been attending a non-accredited school and you love it, stay there. If you want to get accredited, or if you want to get, licensed, then you finish off at an accredited institution and take that test. And there are some really good schools out there. Yeah. So that's what we suggest. We want people to raise the bar. And if you're not interested in licensure and you want to be, just doing your own thing, you do you. That's totally cool. Nobody's going to judge you for that. But we do need lots of people to change the world. And so that's who we're interested in bringing along here. And we'll do anything that we can to help you, to help the other schools, to help the community. That's what we're here for. All right.
Please, miss.
Yes, sir.
Can we do an advertisement? An advertisement?
Yeah, we could do both.
Fantastic. Hello. This is Dr. Alastair Gray, PhD from Home Foundation, and completely separate to everything we've been speaking about. Folks, there is a workforce survey, and please, please, please fill out the survey. It's been available now for a month. There's a number of folks out there that have filled it in. But one of the most... Did you?
Yeah, of course.
Well done. Fantastic. Carly, have you filled it out?
No.
She's been busy.
Righty-ho.
She's been doing yeoman's work.
Well, hang on. This advertisement's going pear-shaped. So everybody, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then head to Home Foundation and the research page. You'll see that there's a workforce survey there. Talk to your friends. There's a link. It's a very, very simple 10 to 11-minute survey that starts to create a whole lot of data about who we are, where we are, what we do, what our practices look like. And let's get this level of information, critical information about our own profession that currently we're guessing about. And so it would be brilliant if you could do that. All right, that's it. Advertisement done.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you've been doing something else in the background, like knitting or gardening or going on a walk, because I know that this is a lot of in the weeds intel. But if you've listened all the way through, it's because you really, really care about homeopathy. And that means that we really, really care about you. And we are so appreciative that you're taking the time to learn about what's going on. Yeah. Carly, thank you for joining us on a holiday.
You're welcome. It was lovely.
Good. All right, gang. We'll do it again.
Folks,
we'll talk to you soon, and it'll be dusty info next time, not this.
Absolutely. It's almost the end of the summer and beginning of the academic year. Woohoo. All right.
Cool.
Let's get into it. See ya.
All right. See ya. Bye, everybody.
Studying homeopathy has never been easier. The Academy of Homeopathy Education offers a professional homeopathy training program starting at $16,000. This includes didactic and clinical training, as well as supervision. No hidden costs or fees. You will graduate ready to practice. Learn more at ahe.online. A collaborative homeopathic conference is happening September 20th through 22nd at Sonoran University in Tempe, Arizona. This is a project of the American Institute of Homeopathy, the Homeopathic Academy of Naturopathic Physicians, the Homeopathic Nurses Association, and the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy. Titled Returning to Our Roots, this conference will focus on utilizing primary homeopathy sources to apply Hahnemann's methodology for consistently exceptional clinical outcomes. You can purchase tickets or learn more about the conference at homeopathyyusa.org. Denise Straiges is excited to be speaking at this conference, and we hope to see you there. Hey, homeopathic practitioners, this one's for you. Home Foundation needs your help. The 2024 Practitioner Workforce Survey is a critical project that will examine the practice characteristics of homeopaths in North America. By participating, you will contribute to the larger mission of the practitioner-generated research network of Home Foundation that strives to improve the field of homeopathy for a better tomorrow. Learn more at homefoundation.org. That's home, HOHM, foundation.org.